Okay, here we go, the starting of the boys game tonight. Starting for Bruce will be jumping will be Lindell Gillespie. Ball is tossed and have to retoss. Number 11, Gillespie. Number 12, Curtis Stevens. Number 14, Howard Stevens. Number 30, Pat Powell. And number 10, Clark Logan. Curtis Stevens, number 12, gets the ball, throws it over to Pat Powell. Very good pass. He fumbles the ball. Pat Powell back to Howard Stevens. Stevens over to Logan. Logan up and shoots and no good. Way off mark. 44. Kip Profit goes up. 42, Sammy Johnson with the ball. Over to number 50, Tyrone Hayes. Back to number 42. They throw the ball away. Be the Trojans basketball. Logan triggers the ball in to number 12, Curtis Stevens. Stevens brings the ball down the floor. Over to Logan. Logan over to Howard Stevens. Howard over to Curtis. Curtis jumps up, shoots. No good. Rebound by number 40, Mike Horton. Number 42, Sammy Johnson comes up the floor. Over to number 50, Hayes. Hayes into number 30. 30 up, shoots, no scores. Rebound by Kip Profit, number 44 on the rebound, and up and shoots the little layup for it's good. Curtis Stevens comes up. Stevens over to Pat Powell. Pat Powell up, shoots, no good. Nobody under the basket to rebound. Kip Profit rebounds. Kip, pretty good sized boy. Ball goes into Kip. Kip turns around, shoots up, and scores. Kip Profit scores, has only 4 points in the ball game. Curtis Stevens brings the ball up to Clark Logan. Clark Logan over to Howard Stevens. Howard Stevens throws the ball away. Intercepted by number 50, Tyrone Hayes. Bruce in a man-to-man. Number 40, Mike Horton scores. 6. Coffeeville, nothing for the Trojans. Curtis Stevens with the basketball. Over to Clark Logan. Clark over to Howard Stevens. Howard shoots a long shot, no good. Rebound by Kip Profit once again. Here comes Fawful, number 42, Sammy Johnson. Over to Kip Profit. Profit up, shoots, no good. Rebound by Curtis Stevens. Curtis brings the ball down the floor and goes all the way up to the layup and scores. 2 points, Howard Stevens. 6, Coffeeville. 2, Bruce. 42, Sammy Johnson up the floor, guarded by Pat Powell. Over to number 50, over to number 40. 40 loses the ball out of bounds. Mike Horton, that is. Ball will be played in by the Trojans. Logan triggers into Curtis Stevens. Stevens brings the ball up with 5:30 left in the first quarter. Ball given to Clark Logan. Clark Logan gives the ball inside to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens up, shoots, and scores. Move Curtis to a high post at that time, and Curtis gets him 2 more. 4-6 now. Trojans only behind by 2. Over to number 40, Horton. Horton back to number 50, Hayes. Hayes into Kip Profit. Profit throws the ball on the basket to number 30, who scores. Lindell Gillespie fouls. Kent Garner gets 2. And Lindell picks up the first foul of the ball game. So number 30, Kent Garner, goes for the 3-point play. 8-4, Coffeeville leading, with a chance to make it a 5-point lead, and it's good. Stevens into Logan. Logan bringing the ball up the floor. Over to Howard Stevens. Howard Stevens jumps up, shoots. Ball's no good. Lindell Gillespie up and scores, and it's fouled by number 44. That being Kip Profit. Brings up first down. A 3-point play could be made by Lindell. Lindell has 1 shot. The Trojans behind by 3. Lindell can cut that to 2 with 4:51 left in the quarter. He has 1 shot. Ball is up and good. 9-7, 2-point lead for Coffeeville. 42, Sammy Johnson brings the ball up the floor. Johnson being guarded by Pat Powell. Johnson goes all the way in and scores. Logan will bring the ball up the floor. Behind by 11-7. Ball over to Pat Powell. Pat Powell stops, jumps, shoots, the ball short. The Coffeeville's ball under the Bruce basket, leading 11-7. 4:28 left. Bruce still in a man-to-man. 50 is Hayes. Stops, shoots, no good. Oh my goodness, little back pushing, everything else in there now. Jump ball between number 10, Clark Logan, and number 30, Kent Garner. And with that timeout, let's take a station break. Four minutes, 11 seconds left in the first quarter. There'll be a jump ball between Clark Logan, number 10, and number 30, Garner. About a foot difference in height here, it looks like, for the Pirates. Pirates control the tip. Over to number 50, back to number 42. Johnson over to number 40, who misses the ball out of bounds, Mike Horton. So the Trojans will play the ball in. Ball comes into Pat Powell, back to Clark Logan. 4 minutes left in the first quarter. Logan to Powell, Powell into Curtis Stevens. Curtis goes up, in, and no good. Rebound by Lindell Gillespie, and is fouled by number 30. 30 being Ken Garner. Picks up his first foul. Gillespie will go to the line to shoot 2 shots. Into the ball game comes number 23 for the Trojans, Tyrone Hightower, replacing Pat Powell. Gillespie to the line to shoot 2. First one's up and off the back of the rim, no good. Can cut the lead to 3 here with this basket. It's up and good. Number 52 comes in for Coffeeville, Richard Nicholson. Coffeeville is much taller team than Bruce. 42, Johnson brings the ball up floor, stops, shoots, and scores. And they hit pretty well from the outside, too. Curtis Stevens over to Logan. Tyrone Hightower. Gillespie walks. Coffee will play the ball in with a chance to go up by 7. They lead 13-8 with Paul is knocked by Clark Logan, comes up the floor, coming all the way. And his foul is called on number 50, Tyrone Hayes. That'll be his foul. Team foul number 3 for Coffee, so Bruce will play it in under their own basket. Curtis Stevens will bring the ball in. Ball goes out to Clark Logan. Clark Logan drives, puts it up, no good. Rebound by Lindell Gillespie over to Clark Logan to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens at free shot line, jump, shoots, no good. Number 44, Kip Profit comes down with it over to number 42, Sammy Johnson. Bring the ball down the floor. 42 Johnson goes all the way around and throws the ball away. Clark Logan up to Howard Stevens. Howard Stevens over to Tyrone Hightower and scores. Very nice passing by Howard and Clark. 42 Johnson comes up the floor. Over to number 50. Back to number 42. Over number 52 into number 30. He'll to the basket and scores. Kent Garner for 2 more. 15-10 by 5. Coffeeville lead. Logan comes up the floor. Get to Curtis Stevens. Curtis turns around, puts the ball on the floor when he ought to be shooting. Walk with the ball by number 44, Kip Profit. Bruce has a couple of people out tonight because of sickness. Spanky Vaughn, Cortez Daniels, both at home with the flu, and we've got a couple of boys on the floor that's not feeling real good. Tyrone goes up, shoots, and scores. Little Tyrone hits well from the outside when he gets hot. Cuts the lead to 3. 1:55 left in the first quarter. 42 Johnson gets the ball into Kip Profit. Ball intercepted by Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens comes down the floor, comes on down, turns around, brings it back out to Clark Logan. Clark Logan back to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens to Hightower, over to Gillespie. Gillespie all the way across to Logan. Logan to Stevens. Stevens goes, jumps up, shoots, and no good. Rebound by number 52, Richard Nicholson with 1:24 left in the first quarter. 15-12, Coffeeville leading. Shoots are no good. Howard Stevenson up for the rebound. Loses the ball away. We ought to have a little 3 seconds in the lane here. 52 rebounds in. Nicholson for 2. By 5 again. Over to Howard, back to Clark. Clark over to Tyrone. Tyrone stops, shoots, no good. Tyrone gets his own rebound, over to Clark Logan. Clark goes in, shoots and scores. Cuts the lead to 3. With 42 seconds left. 42, Johnson goes up the floor, over to number 50, Hayes. Hayes drives, and his foul by number 14 is called with a block. Howard Stevens. So Coffeeville will play the ball in on the side with 33 seconds left in the first quarter. Ball goes into number 52, back to number 50, Hayes. Hayes to number 42, Johnson. Johnson jumps up, shoots, and scores. Okay, up by 5 once again, 20-19. Logan comes up the floor. Ball over to Howard Stevens. Howard Stevens to Clark Logan. Tyrone Hightower. Tyrone shot is blocked. And his foul, but it's not called. Tyrone up and good. Cuts it to 3 with 6 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2. 44 goes up, shoots, no good. And that ends the quarter. No score. So at the end of the quarter, 19-16. Let's take a station break. All right, here we go. Second quarter. Bruce trailing by 3, 19-16. Bruce is a much shorter ball club than Coffeeville. Coffeeville controls the tip to number 42, Sammy Johnson. Sammy Johnson over to number 50, Hayes. Hayes to number 40, shoots a long shot, no good. Rebound by Hightower. Hightower to Curtis Stevens. Curtis brings the ball down the floor. Stevens passes over to Logan. Logan over to Stevens. Stevens to Logan. To Hightower. Hightower back to Logan. Logan to Howard Stevens. Back to Clark Logan. Clark Logan into Curtis Stevens. Curtis goes up on the goal, shoots and scores. Very nice passing, taking her time. Only down by 1 now, 7:19 left. 42, Johnson with the ball for Coffeeville. Over to number 50, Hayes. Hayes over to Kip Profit, back to number 42. 42 missing the basketball. Curtis Stevens gets the rebound. Knocked out of bounds by Coffeeville. Be Bruce's ball under the basket. With a chance to go ahead the first time tonight. Into Tyrone Hightower, good pass, and scores. 20-19, Trojans in front. 42, Sammy Johnson comes up with the basketball. Over to number 50, Hayes. 50 over to number 40, Horton. Horton into Kip Profit. Profit drives up and no good, but is fouled by Tyrone Hightower. Will go to the line to shoot 2 points. Excuse me, to shoot 2 shots. Kip Profit for the Pirates, trailing 19-20. No, they don't call a 2-shot foul. Call it a 1-shot foul. So it will be no shot. We're not in a bonus yet. Triggered into number 50, Hayes. Hayes gives to number 42, Johnson. Johnson back to Hayes. Hayes to number 40 into Kip Profit, and ball stolen by Curtis Stevens. Curtis is coming the length of the floor, puts it up, and no good. Like a little contact there, but nothing's called. Over to number 40, Profit, and Profit walks. So Bruce will play the ball the length of the floor. With 6:17 left in the second quarter. Logan will bring the ball down the floor. Logan goes in to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens up, under the basket and scores. Some nice passing, some nice work under there by Curtis. A little man in there with all those big ones. Johnson comes down the floor. Johnson over to Hayes. Hayes over to Horton. Horton back to Hayes. Hayes drives up, shoots. No good. Rebound is fumbled and taken by Coffeeville, number 50. Taken up. Profit goes up, shoots and misses. Rebound, Howard Stevens way up for the rebound. Curtis Stevens up and misses the layup. Ball is given down the floor to Kip Profit, and Profit loses the ball out of bounds. Into the ball game comes number 52, Richard Nicholson for Coffeeville. Bruce will play the ball the length of the floor, leading by 3. Logan brings the ball up the floor, and leading by 3, 22-19. Over to Howard Stevens. Howard back to Logan, back to Hightower. Hightower up, shoots and scores. If they leave him open there all night, he'll put it in. Johnson goes up the floor. Taking their time. Number 50 over to number 52, into number 30, shoots and scores. Nice passing by the Pirates. 30, Kent Garner scores 2 points. Leading once again by 3. Logan brings the ball up the floor. Over to Howard Stevens. Howard up, shoots, no good. Rebound by number 30, Kent Garner. Up the floor, number 50, Hayes. Over to number 42. 42 shoots long, no good. 52 rebound, puts it in. Richard Nicholson. Lead cut to 1. Logan up the floor, 4:32 left in the second quarter. Logan over to Howard Stevenson. Howard Stevens back to Logan. Logan into Curtis Stevens. Curtis has the ball knocked away. Up and in by Profit. So Coffeeville once again takes the lead. Logan brings the ball up the floor. Into Stevens to Howard Stevens. Howard jump, shoots, no good. Rebound by number 52, Nicholson. Number 50, Hayes, brings the ball up the floor. Back to Johnson. Over to number 52, Nicholson. Nicholson back to Johnson. Johnson into Kip Profit. Profit up, shoots, no good. Rebound by Profit. Goes back up, shoots, and scores. By 3 now, once again, Coffeeville is. Logan brings the ball up, trailing by 3. Over to Hightower. Hightower to Logan. Logan to Stevens. Stevens to Logan. Logan shoots up, shoots, no good. Curtis Stevens gets it on rebound, puts it up and good. The little man playing well under the basket tonight. 27-26 by 1. Coffeeville leads. Johnson up to Hayes. Hayes over to number 52, Nicholson. Nicholson into number 30, who the foul is called on number 12, Curtis Stevens. A blocking foul. I believe it was on Curtis Stevens. Coffeeville will play the ball under, leading 27-26. Ball is intercepted by Tyrone Hightower. Tyrone gives the ball over to Robert Bean. Robert Bean shoots up and scores. Bean is now in the ball game for Bruce, and so is Russ Anderson. Over to number 52, Nicholson. Nicholson over to number 30. 30 shoots and scores. 30 being number Kent Garner. Trojans trail by 1. They were up by 1, now trail by 1. 2:43 left in the first quarter. Ball over to Robert Bean, into Curtis Stevens. Curtis stops at 3, shoots and scores. Curtis putting the ball in tonight. 30-29, Bruce leads. 2:32 left in the second quarter. 50, Hayes with the ball. Number 42, Johnson. Johnson over number 52. And back to Johnson, back to Hayes. Hayes jumps, shoots, no good. Curtis Stevens with a rebound and foul by number 52, Richard Nicholson. That brings up, that's the 4th foul on Coffeeville, still not a 1-and-1. Bruce will bring the ball up, leading by 1. 2:15 left in the second quarter. Logan brings the ball up over to Bean. Bean into Stevens. Stevens jumps, shoots, and scores. 32-29, Trojans lead. Johnson comes up. Over to Hayes. who the foul was on. But number 42, Sammy Johnson, will go to the line. Shooting a 1-1. First shot is up and no good. Rebound by Curtis Stevens. Curtis is fouled by number 30. 30 being Kent Garner. So Stevens will go to the line to a chance to put the Trojans ahead by 4. If he makes that one, then a change by 5. 1:50 left in the second quarter. In for Coffeeville comes number 40. 40 being Mike Horton, one of the 5 starters back in the ball game. Stevens to shoot 1-1. Trojans leading 32-29, 1:50 left in the half. First one is good. (33-29). Second one is up and good. Stretches the lead to 5. 1:50 left in the second quarter. Johnson goes up the floor with the basketball. Trojans now in the zone. Over to 50, Hayes. Hayes back to number 52, being Nicholson. Nicholson back to Hayes. Hayes back to Johnson. Johnson goes around to Nicholson. Nicholson back to Hayes. Hayes drives, jumps, shoots. No good. Rebound by number 40. Mike Horton for 2. 122, 121 left in the second quarter. 44-31 Trojans lead. Over to Bean. Bean to Stevens. Stevens jumps up, shoots. No good. Russ Anderson jumps up, shoots. No good. Misses a little one right under the basket. Caldwell had a chance to cut it to 1. To Hayes. To Johnson. Johnson shoots. No good. Coffeeville shoots the ball out of bounds. Didn't touch anything. So Howard Stevens into the ball game for Russ Anderson. Logan will trigger the ball in to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens bring the ball up the floor with 52 seconds left in the ball game, left in the first half. Looks like Bruce is playing for 1 shot. Curtis over to Logan. Logan back to Stevens. Back to Logan. Back to Stevens. Stevens holding the ball. Dribbles to the middle of the floor. Over to Bean. Back to Stevens. Bruce will call timeout. With 17 seconds left on the clock, let's take a station break. We got 17 seconds left in the second half. The Trojans will have time to get away. 1 shot's what they're going to try to do. 13, 12, 11, 10. They ought to go for the basket now. They got to go. 7 seconds. 6, 5, 4, 3. Bean shoots the shot. No good. So at the end of the first half, the score is Bruce 34, Coffeeville 31. We get the second half underway. Bruce leading 34-31. Have the same 5 starters for the Trojan. It looks like, let's see, same 5 for Coffeeville. Hayes, Profit, Johnson, Garner, and Horton. Coffeeville gets a tip. Number 44 comes down the floor, misses. Rebound by Gillespie. Gillespie over to Curtis Stevens. Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Over to Clark Logan. Clark over to Howard Stevens. Back to Curtis Stevens. Curtis from a long way out. Jump shoots. No good. Knocked out of bounds by Stevens. Coffee will play the ball. 42 throws the ball into Hayes. Back to 42 Johnson. Johnson up the floor. Over to Hayes. Hayes over to number 40. 40 in number 30. 30 jumps, no good. Rebound by number 50, Hayes. Hayes outside, jump, shoots, no good. Rebound by Pat Powell. Curtis Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Stevens dribbling over to Pat Powell. Back to Curtis Stevens. Back to Clark Logan. Clark Logan up, shoots, misses everything. Number 40 with a rebound was Horton. Over to 50, over to 40 Horton. Horton up, shoots, and scores. Trojans lead by 1. Howard Curtis Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Leading by 1, 6:54 left in the third quarter. Howard over Curtis. Curtis over to Pat Powell, over to Clark Logan. Logan holds the ball over the head, back to Pat Powell, back to Clark Logan, back to Howard Stevens, back to Pat Powell. Moving the ball around to Curtis Stevens, over to Clark Logan. Clark Logan over to Howard Stevens. Howard jumps, shoots, no good. Rebound off and called it off of Coffeeville's hand, so Trojans will retain possession. Curtis Stevens will trigger the ball in. Ball comes into Logan. Back to Stevens. Stevens goes to the corner, jumps, shoots, and scores. Trojans back by 3. 6:20 left in the third quarter. 42 over to Hayes. Hayes back to Johnson. Johnson drives, jumps, shoots, no good. Rebound by Howard Stevens. Howard brings the ball up to Pat Powell. Pat goes all the way in for the layup and all the way around the rebound and off the rim and no good. Ball all the way up to Kip Profit. Profit goes in and scores. Cut it to 1. Logan over to Curtis Stevens. 5:50 left in the third quarter. Slowly bring the ball up the floor. Stevens over to Logan. Logan is blocked by, goes up by Gillespie, gets the rebound, up and good. Up by 3. Gillespie gets 2 points. Johnson brings the ball up to Hayes. Hayes over to Horton. Back to Hayes, back to Johnson. Up, no good. Rebound by number 42, Johnson, up and no good. Rebound by Horton, up and good. Mike Horton with 2, 38-37, Trojans by 1. 5:15 left in the quarter. Stevens over to Logan. Logan to Stevens. Logan into Gillespie. Gillespie jumps, shoots, no good. Crawford comes down the floor in a hurry. Johnson slows up. Bruce in a man-to-man. Over to Johnson. Johnson back to Hayes, back to Johnson, over to Horton. Horton in, back to Hayes. Hayes over to Horton. Hayes goes in the line, shoots, and scores. They go up by 1. Call for 39, Trojans 38. 4:35 left in the ball game. Stevens comes up the floor. Over to Logan. Logan over to Howard Stevens. Howard jumps, shoots, and in and out, no good. Profit comes up with a rebound. Johnson comes down the floor with a chance to go by 3. Over to Hayes, over to Horton, into Profit. Profit goes up, shoots, no good. Rebound by Pat Powell. Pat goes down the middle of the floor, 3-on-2 break, and loses the basketball. Profit goes up, shoots, no good. Gillespie over to Stevens. Stevens now goes down, over to Howard Stevens. Howard jumps, shoots, no good. Foul called on Pat Powell, number 30. Tyrone Hightower in for Pat Powell. Coffeeville leading by 1, 39-38. Coffeeville's ball. Into 42, Johnson. Johnson comes up the floor. Johnson to Hayes. Hayes to Horton. Horton looks up, back to Hayes. Over to Johnson. To Horton. Horton goes up and in and shoots. No good. Rebound by Gillespie. Up to Boyd Hightower. Hightower up and scores. 40-39. Trojans by 1. 3:23 left. Hayes comes up the ball up the floor with the ball. Over to Horton. Horton back to Hayes. Hayes steps in back to Johnson. Johnson drives up all the way in on, scores. They got to stop that. They just let them drive all the way into the basket. Johnson, I believe, scored those 2 points. Stevens out front, jumps up, shoots, no good. Rebound by Profit. Profit still controlling the basketball. Over to number 30, Horton. Garner, that is. To 50, Hayes. Chance to go up by 3, 2:44. Over to Horton. Horton fakes a shot, back to Hayes, up, shoots, and scores. Up by 3. Stevens brings the ball down the floor, trailing by 3. 2:31 left. Over to Hightower. Hightower shoots, no good. Trojan not hitting right now, but thrown away by Coffeeville, so Bruce gets a break on the turnover with a chance to cut the lead once again to 1. Logan will trigger the ball in. Triggers in to Curtis Stevens. Stevens over to Hightower. Hightower from outside shoots, no good. Not hitting anything now. Johnson brings it up. All the way in and under, scores, and he's fouled by Hightower. Chance for a 3-point play to make it go 6 up. We got to stop Johnson driving in, and for the layup, somebody's got to get on him. 45-40, Coffeeville leads. Johnson with 1, shoots, good. 6-point lead. Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Need 2 points bad. Trojans timeout. With that timeout, let's take a station break. Stevens with the ball over to Chiron High, over to Howard. Stevens, Howard jump shoots, no good. We can't buy a bucket. Johnson up the floor with a chance to go up by 8. Johnson up, shoots, no good. Gillespie with the rebound. We've gone back to a zone. Stevens all the way up to Tyrone Hightower, and he steps out of bounds. Coffee will play the length of the floor, leading by 6. Johnson up the floor to Hayes, to Horton, to Hayes, to Johnson. Johnson shoots a long shot outside, no good. 44 is on his back. So Bruce will play the ball the length of the floor. Robert Bean reports in for Howard Stevens. Logan will trigger it in, leading, trailing by 6 with 1:19 to go. Third quarter. Howard Stevens brings the ball up. Excuse me, Curtis Stevens. Hold to Robert Bean. Robert Bean shoots no good. Can't buy one. Hayes has the ball into Profit. Profit is fouled by Curtis Stevens. Profit will go to the line to shoot 2. (46-40), 1 minute left in the third quarter. Bruce has been outscored 16-6 in the third quarter so far. First shot is up, good. 7-point lead for Coffeeville, with a chance to make it 8. Up, no good, off the front. A jump ball, Gillespie, and number 50, Hayes, for Coffeeville. Bruce will close the tip. Curtis Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Down the floor, jumps, shoots, scores. That's the basket we needed now. We need to get it back and cut it to 3. Johnson up the floor. 47-42. 42 seconds left. Over to Horton. Horton back to Hayes. Hayes to Johnson. Hayes to Horton. Horton, long shot outside, no good. Curtis Stevens down the middle of the floor. 2 on 2. Curtis stops, shoots. No good. You needed that basket. 20 seconds left in the third quarter. 47-42. Over to Hayes. Over to Horton. Into number 30. Walking call. 10 seconds left on the clock. Trojans will play it in with 10 seconds left. Nine, 8, 7. Bean will take the last shot of the quarter up and good. That's the end of the third quarter. With Coffeeville ahead 47-44. Let's take a station break. Quarter. Fourth and final quarter. 8 minutes left. 47-43, Coffeeville by 3. Coffeeville's ball. Ball into Hayes, back to Johnson. Johnson over to Hayes. Hayes into Profit. Profit shoots up, no good. 30 rebounds, no, up and in. Ken Garner puts him up once again by 5. 5 points. Over to Robert Bean. Bean to Logan. Logan to Bean. Bean over to Logan. Logan over to Curtis Stevens. Curtis over to Hightower. Hightower jump shoots, no score. Gillespie rebound. Gillespie up, no good. It looked like he was fouled a little bit there. Up chance to go by 7. 7-18. 7-17. Into Profit. Ball taken away by Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens goes the length of the floor to Bean. Bean up, shoots, scores. Nice pass by Curtis Stevens. Down by 3, the Trojans. Johnson comes up over to Hayes. Hayes, back to Hayes. Hayes to Horton. Horton drives, baseline, jumps up, shoots, scores. Bean into Logan. Logan brings the ball up the floor. They trailing by 5. Ball over to Bean. Bean to Logan. Into Gillespie. Over to Bean. Over to Logan. Logan from outside shoots, no good. Tipped out and controlled by 42, Johnson. Trailing by 5. 6:32 left in the quarter. Hayes to Horton. The White's ball off of from 44's foot. Chance to cut it to 3. We got to get it to somebody that's hitting. Nobody's hitting much except Stevens. Over to Bean. Bean to Logan. Logan to Stevens. Stevens from the outside. Up. No good. Stevens gets his own rebound. Goes up. Knocked away. Bean goes up. And rounded in. Robert Bean gets 2. Once again, the lead cut to 3. 6:04 left in the third quarter. 23, Hightower's called with the foul. On the floor. Coffeeville will play it in under the basket. Keep him away from the cheap basket here. 42, Johnson will trigger it in. Triggers into number 30, Horton. Horton to Hayes. Hayes to Johnson. Johnson drive, jump, shoots. No good. Rebound by Hightower. Hightower bring the ball up the floor, gives it off to Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens brings the ball up the floor. Gives it to Clark Logan. Clark Logan handles the ball out front, back to Curtis Stevens. Over to Robert Bean. Robert Bean back to Clark Logan. Clark shoots from the outside and scores. We got to have a little of that now. 50-51. By 1, we're down. Johnson brings the ball up the floor. Johnson being very deliberate. Over to Hay. Back in the middle of Profit. Profit jump shoots. No good. Rebound by Curtis Stevens. Got a 3-on-1 break. Stevens over to Logan. Logan up. Shoots and scores. Nice passing by Curtis Stevens on the 3-on-1 break. Trojans go back in front by 1. 52-51. 5:08 left. Over to Hayes. Hayes to Horton. Intercepted by Hightower. Hightower, a very good defense by Curtis Stevens. Ball back out front now. Over to Bean. Back to Logan. Back to Stevens. Stevens drive, jumps up, shoots. No good. Hightower retrieves the ball and is almost tripped down. Ball given to Bean. Bean jumps up, shooting. No good. Coffeeville rebounds. Trailing by 1, they come down the floor. Bruce leads 52-51. Ball to Hayes. Hayes drives in and is called with an offensive foul. Number 50 is called with offensive foul, Tyrone Hayes. So timeout, Coffeeville. So with that timeout, let's take a station break. All right, 4 minutes, 28 seconds left in the ball game. Bruce leads by 1 and have the ball. Ball goes in to Curtis Stevens. Curtis comes up the floor with the basketball. Stevens over to Bean. Bean jumps, shoots, and scores. We need a little outside shooting here. Bean takes 2. 54-51, Bruce by 3. Ball to Hayes. Hayes jumps, shoots. No good. Russ Anderson with a rebound to Curtis Stevens. Curtis brings down 3-on-3. Ball over to Clark. Logan. Clark goes up, misses everything. Russ Anderson intercepts the ball. Over to Clark Logan. 3:53 left in the fourth quarter. 54-53. Trojans lead. Bean goes up short. Curtis Stevens goes up for the rebound. Foul is on number 52, Richard Nicholson. So Bruce will get the basketball back.
I didn't know.
How many fouls is that on Coffeeville in the second half?
They had 4 first.
So on the next foul, it'll be 1-and-1 for the Trojans. They're not in the bonus yet. Logan back to Bean. Bean back to Logan. Logan takes a long shot outside. No good. So Coffee comes up with a chance to cut it to 1. Over to Hayes. Hayes over to number 52, who goes in and slapped away by Stevens. Robert Bean goes up the floor. Goes all in away, shoots no good. Clark Logan retrieves the ball, brings the ball back outside. Slow the ball down a little bit. 3:07 left in the ball game. Trojans by 3. Curtis Stevens with the ball, back to Logan. Logan dribbling the ball around outside. Back to Stevens. Stevens has the ball outside. Stevens over to Russ Anderson, over to Clark Logan. Clark Logan shoots from outside and scores. 5-point lead for the Trojans. 2:43 left. You need to get it back here and get 2 more. Ball over to number 52, Richardson. Richardson inside to number 30. 30, Horton shoots, Garner shoots and scores. Trojan by 3, 2:30 left. 56-53. Ball over to Logan, back to Stevens. Stevens with the ball, dribbling the ball into Tyrone Hightower, up, shoots, and scores. Needed that basket. Once again up by 5. Johnson comes down the floor, over to Hayes. Back to Johnson. Timeout called by Coffeeville. With that timeout, let's take a station break. Two minutes, 6 seconds left in the ball game. The Trojans lead Coffeeville Pirates by 5. Coffeeville has the ball. Number 24 checks in for Coffeeville, that being William Johnson. Hayes triggers the ball into Johnson. Johnson back to Hayes, to 40, Horton. Back to Hayes, back to Johnson. Ball slapped away by Robert Bean and controlled by Robert if he can get it. Coffeeville ball, but that does take some time off the clock. 1:53 now. Coffeeville trails by 5. Number 24, Johnson brings it up. Johnson to Hayes. Hayes to Horton. Horton to Hayes. To Profit. Profit loses the ball off. Jump, shoots. No good. Hightower on the rebound. Very good rebound for Hightower. 1:34 left in the ball game. Stevens comes up. Being very deliberate. Over to Bean. Bean back to Stevens. Stevens over to Bean. Bean jump, shoots, scores. Up by 7, 117, 116. 7-point lead. Over to Horton. Horton jumps, shoots. No good. It goes in, yes. Stevens brings the ball up. 1 minute, 4-3. Leads by 5. Over to Hightower, back to Logan. Stevens has the basketball over to Logan. Back to Stevens. Stevens dribbles the ball around. Stevens over to Bean. Bean back to Stevens. Stevens over to Logan. Hold the basketball to Stevens. Stevens has the basketball. Stevens still dribbling over to Bean. Bean is fouled by number 44, Profit, with 32 seconds left on the clock. Bruce leads 60-55. Robert Bean will go to the line. No, they say it's not in the 1-and-1. So Bruce will retain possession. Ball all the way back down in the backcourt to Clark Logan. Logan is fouled by number 42, being Sammy Johnson. That should be 1-and-1, and it is 1-and-1. Very important free throws here, leading by 5 with 28 seconds. Clark Logan will go to the line to shoot a 1-and-1. We can't see very much now, folks, because of the people standing in front of them. Now they leave. 1-and-1. First one is up and off and no good. Coffeeville bringing the ball down the floor with 25 seconds left. Johnson shoots up, no good. Profit puts it in and good. 3-point lead for the Trojans. Back to Stevens. Stevens to Logan. Logan across the timeline to Hightower. Hightower shoots and scores. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Shoots up and scores. Ball game is over. The Trojans win 62-59. If you'll wait right here just a minute, I'll give you some scores. Let's take first for the Trojans. Number 10, Logan, has 8 points. Gillespie had 2, 4, 6 points. Stevens had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Tyrone Hightower had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Robert Bean had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And that's the way the scoring went. For Kip Profit for Coffeeville had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 13. Johnson had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Garner had 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. Horton had 4, 8, 10, 12. So that's the way the scoring went. With a final score, Bruce wins it by 3.